What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to my second episode. This is your boy Reggie G, and today I want to talk to you about turning material things into gods. So, growing up, I was small and loved playing sports, but I knew that I could never be a professional because I was always going to be short. So, I fell in love with cars when I was young because I wasn't tall enough or thug enough for the girls, and I knew cars would never let me down. And if they did, all I had to do was fix them. So ever since I started my first job, the majority of my money went into whatever I drove. So it was like an unfinished work of art that could never be done, depending on whatever add-ons I put on the car. So, I was obsessed. I bought car parts before I bought clothes or even underwear. But I never really realized, what I thought was a gift was actually a curse. So when I was 18 years old, I was leaving from my girlfriend's house one night, heading home, and as she was playing a video game in my car, I looked down for a brief second, and by the time I looked up, a car came into my lane, and we instantly collided, and my car was totaled. Little did I realize that was the first time God would take my car away from me. Being young and dumb, I had no idea that I had turned my love of cars into an obsession. But I was going to learn soon enough. About 2 years later, my family moved to Colorado, and I financed my very own car. I was 19, I had a 750 credit score, and I was eager to jump into debt. So I poured every ounce of money I had into my car, yet again, and wherever I drove around, I felt like I was untouchable. I would get compliments on a daily basis, and after about a year living there, I actually started to date a young lady next door to me, and we were inseparable. And for the first time, I had actually loved someone as much as I love my cars, and I thought she was the one. And I had almost went to jail for her once, just because of just the sheer love that I had for her, and I didn't even care. They always say that love will make you do some crazy things. I definitely believe them. But the interesting thing was she was a Christian, and I was an atheist, and she knew that she could never settle down with a rebel like me one day. And once she just told me that she was just decided to move, and she had to go, and just like that she was gone, and I was in a dark place after that. So once again, it was me and my car. A jet black 2001 Mitsubishi Eclipse GTV6 5-speed manual. It always had to be a manual. And I owned it right around the time that gas was about $4 a gallon. So that $60 fill-up was definitely burning a hole in my pockets. So although I loved my car, I decided to trade it in, and later on I regretted that decision. I ended up meeting the guy who bought my car from the dealership I traded in at shortly after that, and that's when I realized that, of course, I wanted it back. But that's also when I realized the fact that regardless of the material or the material object, even if it's a person, there's no greater regret than realizing that you love something and you're not able to get it back. So now I was without my girl, and there went car number 2. And although I claim to be an atheist, I was still mad at God for me not getting or having what I really wanted. So fast forward a few years, and now I'm married with a child, have another one on the way, and life's going pretty good. I just started a new job, moved into my first home. Things are going pretty well. Then I thought, just like always, things were getting pretty boring, and another concept came into my mind. I wanted to drive something new, wanted to drive something fun. So the car I had for just about 8 months was getting boring, and I wanted something fun again. I missed shifting, and I needed some more power. So I hunted and hunted for a new car, and finally found one. Something fast, something unique. It was a brand new 2017 Honda Civic Type R. It was beautiful. Finally locked one down, got a really good deal. Convinced the wife that somehow I was still going to be able to get into something practical because it was a 4-door, and I was back in love again, or so I thought. Little did I realize this was not an everyday driver. The seats weren't comfortable, The gas mileage was, a whole lot worse than the car I was coming from, especially being as though it was a hybrid that I had before. So I did the somewhat responsible thing and downgraded from that car to a newer model sedan and leased it so I wouldn't carry over any negative equity the next time around. Plus, I wanted to finally prove to my dad that I could pay off a car for once in my life. But what happened next was the kicker. One day, I went to lunch at my local Chick-fil-A down the road from my job and saw some high schoolers sitting in front of me at a table just chatting amongst themselves. And it seemed harmless at first. But then something started to dawn on me. See, the Chick-fil-A was right across the street from my high school. And it had been 14 years since I graduated myself. And I realized that I was battling the same demons from back then. I was chasing the same endless dream of being flashy, standing out, and wasting money for nothing. Literally just chasing my tail for something as silly and as stupid as a car. Even as a believer and a follower of Christ, I was still struggling with that same sin. Materialism at its finest. The true definition of iniquity or immorality. A good friend of mine and pastor, Eddie Williams, explained to me in this theory he called the ultimate thing. And I'll never forget it, but admit that I still struggle with it. The concept describes how we take something materialistic and turn it into a god and worship it. And I did it with cars. Some people do it with women or men. Others do it with sex or drugs or shopping or sleeping or working or even social media. I mean, you've seen people just straight addicted to their phones. Most of us do it unknowingly, but we place so many meaningless things above the very person who gave us all these fleeting things we worship in the first place. We spend so much time, effort, and energy and money on worthless things and obsess over Facebook likes or fancy purses or smoking or drinking or fantasy football scores or even sales. But none of those things will get you into heaven if you die today. What's sad is that I wasted so much money and time on cars and have not one of them to show for it today, except that the one that I currently lease and won't own. I beg anyone listening to this message, stop. Look around you and just take advantage of what really matters. I blame myself every day for not taking advantage of the opportunity to call or at least text my dad because he's still living and I find myself too busy too frequently. Because I can never call my mom and do the same thing because she's no longer living. I put my head down in shame when I find myself responding to instant messages from customers from my job when I'm at home and I could be playing with my little girl or spending quality time with my wife. I feel bad after another weekend goes by that I never reach out to my best friend who finally moved back into town after 4 years of being away. But sometimes I would rather just stay at home and just watch Netflix and chill, right? God has offered us so much more in this life. And if we just admit that nothing else is more important than Him, we'd just be so much happier. We have to realize that there is much more to life than just living to die. Stop and appreciate a beautiful sunset sometimes. Put the phone down and actually have a real conversation with people around you. Read a good book and share a story instead of gossip. Let's go back to the days when kids went outside for a change and actually learned a skill instead of learning how to twerk. I mean, show people, actually how to have a conversation and what life is all about instead of showing kids how to play video games with fully automatic weapons or how to eat Tide Pods. I mean, here's one thing that really kind of touched me was a verse in the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. And it says this, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." See, in my heart, the thing that I thought would make me happy was having a fancy car. But little did I know, no car would ever, and still won't ever, bring me the satisfaction that I need. And God does say he's a jealous God. And I kept replacing him with cars or women or even food at one point and gained 50 pounds. But every time I put those things over him, he took them away to show me who was really important. See, the biggest problem was that I just wasn't grateful for what I had. I kept thinking that I needed more to be happy. I mean, how often do we replace God with things that are temporary? I mean, these days we fall victim to the lies we see on TV and social media that tell us that our house isn't big enough, or our job doesn't pay enough, or our spouse isn't pretty enough or handsome enough, or our kids are never smart or talented enough, that we're not enough. And it's just like the old saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And these days, we're being sold anything because we have no foundation. We have to focus on what really matters. And it's funny because till this day, we still have that fancy Civic that I bought and I traded in. And I'm forced to see it every day I go into work. And it's just a reminder of who I used to be, not who I am. And I urge anyone listening to this message to just take the leap and just choose God over materialism now, before it consumes you. You'll get so much more out of life. Thanks again for listening. One love, and God bless.